Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. This is a small talk video because CG doesn't like putting out news on Tuesdays anymore. So the major piece of news that they just kind of dumped onto this little Wednesday update is the Ultimate Journey, which is what we have been getting little hints at in the data mines for about a month now, maybe a little more, showing the Galactic Legend currency, Galactic Legend store. We saw some images, some other information. Normally this is the type of thing that we would get in a road ahead or a State of the Galaxy, but they decided not to do this time. They did on a stream say something about it. I don't really pay attention to the stream, so I kind of just picked up on it from other places, but we'll get more into it in about 4 days time when this event goes live. But there are some pieces of information that we know right now. The post does give us some basic information. We are going to need Relic 7 on the Galactic Legend only as a requirement. The other characters doesn't have a specific mention threshold, although in the data mines from the Swugga events server, they do have a recommendation of Relic 5 on the characters. And in some cases, like Lord Vader, on his event, they are going to allow Maul or Empire characters. And that should be a good baseline. Hopefully that's all we're going to need and not Relic 8 or 9, but we'll have to get a little bit more information as we play through the event. The post also does give us a little bit of information that we are going to be able to use each of our GLs one time for free, and then we're going to have to refresh. But the thing that I think is pretty positive about this is that the data mines have also shown that the refresh for the tier is only going to be 250 crystals, and for CG, a 250 crystal refresh is pretty affordable. Each attempt is going to get us 300 of these Galactic Legend tokens, and from the post we know that we can refresh up to 2 times. So in that scenario, with each Galactic Legend character, that puts us in this situation of having about 900 tokens per Galactic Legend if you do the 2 refreshes. And that could add up to a pretty meaningful amount, because we also have the store information here. As the store is active in the game right now, I'm sure all of you by the time you're watching this have already seen it. Got a little bit of information. We have a max of 10k here, and so each of these events, like I'm a 4, just about to be a 5 GL player because I'm working on getting Leia right now, already farming tickets. So after I have Leia, that means about in the neighborhood of 5k, short of 5k tokens that I could get if I'm refreshing that many times, although I probably won't. Those refreshes are going to add up pretty quickly, but I might do something like 1 refresh on each GL, or maybe on the easier to beat GL missions, and maybe use 1,000 crystals. So maybe I'm getting, so if I'm being a little bit more conservative with my refreshes, maybe 2.5k each time this event shows up. And the data mines also indicated, or Meathead said somewhere, that we are going to see this event once a month. And now one of the big changes this has made, I think I've talked about this in other forums, is what this shift has done is make this continual move by CG of making Galactic Legends more important. Because like you can see from my roster, I only have 4. I'm a long time playing player, but I've been able to make do by ignoring Galactic Legends to a certain extent and still be able to perform very well because CG has allowed that to happen. CG is basically ending that and saying that if you want your roster to continue to accelerate quickly, you need to not only have GLs, but you need to have good GLs. So it's going to prioritize them for me in a way that they've only recently been. Like, this is something that since Jabba I've been making more of a focus, because Jabba with the crate raid, with Smuggler's Run 2, that makes having Jabba fairly critical. Leia to a certain extent as well, although Endor Escalation is not as good as Smuggler's Run 2, it's still good. With the new raid, Leia is becoming very important. And this was a move that I've been that I was been talking about and kind of encouraging people who watch the channel to move towards, is CG is saying now you can't wait to get a GL, you need to go after them quickly, which is why I went after Leia as quickly as I have. But what I am happy to see is there's no major consequences for me being a player or players like me who ignored the light speed bundles. Like for me, I didn't want to spend, that was a line I didn't want to cross, at least not in that way. Technically I've spent about $15 The Lightspeed bundle, though, the way that infused a change into my roster was something a little bit different than picking up a stun gun for an event one time years ago. First Order, likewise, is the same, but the thing that's critical and that we are seeing from the information here is that they're not mandatory. I'm going to not have as much access to the event. There's going to be the SLKR and Ray phases that I'm not going to be able to participate in, but I'm going to be able to participate in the rest and do fine with my roster. And that's exactly what I was hoping was going to happen and what we ultimately end up seeing. What it does mean, though, is going after my next GL, which is going to ultimately be Lord Vader. This is going to get prioritized much more than it had because this store is going to be very beneficial to our accounts, particularly for players who are stuck in Proving Grounds. If you happen to be farming shards through Proving Grounds, then I do think finishing characters or accelerating characters through this is probably worth the consideration, like 20 shards of some of these characters, boosting the time it takes to get them. That to me is a justifiable expense, and you're going to want to get done with these things as soon as possible so that then you are able to focus on the resources like I'm going to end up doing. And what I'm going to use my currency for, it's going to be the Omicrons, because Omicrons right now are very difficult to come by and you need to be pretty judicious about how you spend them. Like, I'm only going on using my Omis on abilities that are pretty close to a no-brainer. The nice to have ones I've largely ignored completely. Now I'll start being able to put on some of those other ones that are solid but not game changers. Things like Radis or Dash, like those are perfectly fine. They don't move the needle. I just put on Saws today because that was one I've been curious about. Darth Talon's another one that I'd love to play around with, but I just, prior to this point, have largely ignored because I didn't feel like they were critical. Now, this store is going to allow us to make some of those choices. It's also going to allow us to look at territory battle ones a little bit more, territory war ones a little bit more, because the expense and downside's not going to be as expensive for us to make those kinds of decisions. In terms of some of these other pieces, the fragmented one, this is not a good conversion rate to me. These drop at a pretty high rate from the node itself, although I do like being able to buy this piece because signal data is so hard to come by. Like, I could see myself grabbing this from time to time, but I'm not going to do that in most cases. I'm going to be grabbing the Omis. The Kairos, I'm not going to touch those. You can get them from plenty of other stores, from Grand Arena, guild events. It's just, this resource is going to be too valuable to use on Kairos. Micro attenuators, same deal. These drop at a really high rate from Smuggler's Run 2. I would just get Jabba instead of spending them here. Plus, you can use your get if you really want to on the micro attenuators. That's a much better deal than using this currency. Then the Proving Ground shards are the other option, but we have also some of these gear pieces down here. There might be an argument for some of these pieces because the quantities that you are getting them in, that might be in the range where the conversion into some of the pieces might start making sense. Like now with like the thermal Zinbidi cards, that's a fairly cheap piece to get. Impulse detectors fairly cheap. You could also buy the fusion furnace and get into the gear to keypad. That is a piece that maybe using some of the Galactic Legend tokens might make sense, because getting 10 of those for 300, that's one attempt of the event with one Galactic Legend. Like, that's not really moving the needle too much, but those keypads, they are fairly expensive. Mark II tokens could also use on a lot of other pieces. That does technically ease up some of the resources on that piece, where I could see myself doing this from time to time. If I'm flirting with 10k, I might consider it if I have a decent amount of Omis, or I've placed all the Omis I care to place. A couple things on the Grand Arena Championship. Squish, this I thought was going to be fine. It looks so far like it's going to be fairly helpful. My opinion of this, I didn't feel like it was worth throwing into a video, but since we're kind of just throwing in a bunch of ideas, we're going to do it right now. CG wants to help out spenders, and spenders were the most frustrated group by the squish. So it's something that I saw that they were going to use this as an opportunity to alleviate the concern for the most important customers. And that looks to have been proven out. More people are moving into the higher levels of Kyber. We'll see if that continues, but my guess is this algorithm is going to make this stuff less of an issue than it had been. What CG doesn't want is to have their Kraken spending thousands of dollars and wondering why they can't make it in Kyber 1 and are constantly being forced out, and then reconsidering whether or not they should be spending that amount of money. That would be bad for CG. Last update, I guess we got about 2 weeks ago about the Mandalor requirements. I was kind of expecting we'd get one of these characters by now, which is why I haven't talked about them, but we should address them. We do have Grogu coming to the game. I think tag-wise, there's the potential here for unaligned Force user, Mandalorian, droid. Like, this could be a pretty powerful plug-and-play character. That's at least what I am hoping for. Like, we could see IG-12 Grogu be a part of the light side Mandalorian squad with Mandalor, Bo-Katan armor, Paz Vizsla, Bam, some combination of those characters. Not crazy about it being Relic 7 requirements on that, because one of the things that I've been saying for a long time is I want CG to not mandate requirements like that, to gate events by requirements, because that just spreads uniformity across our rosters and make it boring where everybody has the same everything, which is why I'm actually really happy with how the Galactic Legend event is structured, because by only mandating relics on the Galactic Legends, that allows us a ton more flexibility on the rest of our roster. That means what I've been saying is I want CG to raise the ceiling, not the floor, and that's what I'm hoping with, where maybe they're saying Relic 5 is what is recommended, but maybe it's not going to be winnable with that Relic 5, but at least we are in a situation there where maybe different players are relicking up different characters in different ways and making some decisions with their own rosters to customize their own rosters in their own specific ways to their own preferences, and allowing us to have a little bit more fun in that kind of way again. But for Mandalor Bo, we don't get that. With the other character though, we do get Kelleran is a character I am very happy to be added to the game. There's some things that I'm hoping for here, hoping to see, because the pattern that we've been seeing from CG now for a couple years is them adding new marquee characters that create new squads and adds utility to bad characters or underused characters. It might not make a good squad, but at least makes a usable squad. And I'm hoping Kelleran is finally the missing piece for the Galactic Republic Jedi. Because right now we have Eth Koth, Kit Fisto, Luminara, Jedi Knight Guardian, Ima D, Plo Koon, Jedi Consular, Barriss to a certain extent. Like, these characters are not very good. You can use some of them in some niche places, but in general, they've got issues. And what I'm hoping to see is something within his kit to make these characters usable. And I'm in a position where I'm able to take advantage of that. Most of these characters are fairly easy to gear. So this is a place where if you have some excess gear because of how the crate raid has changed things a little bit for how our gearing priorities can be, where we can go after some ridiculous things, feel free to prepare in advance a little bit. Take them up to gear 11. Like, this is my staging ground where I wait for characters like Kelleran who could potentially unlock these characters, at which point I'll take them higher. But it puts me in a position where I'm better able to judge what gear I need or don't need and how to allocate all my resources and tokens as I prepare things in advance. Because what I've ultimately done by taking essentially my entire roster to at least gear 11 minimum is now I'm just done with certain gear pieces, and I'll never have to use any tokens or resources on them almost ever again. And Kelleran, if he is the missing piece, that means Kit Fisto, Ima D are characters I'll finally be bringing up. And Ima D is a character that I have a soft spot for, because when I started playing the game, they gave us a free Bronzium character that got abused at a certain point, so they got rid of it. But I'm a Gundy was the free character that I got, and I had over-invested in him and threw on stun guns at a time when I didn't understand the value of a stun gun a very long time ago, and I really enjoyed using him in the early part of the game when I had no idea what I was doing. But realistically, what I would expect to happen, there might be synergy between Kelleran Beck and Grogu just because of the lore situation of Kelleran saving Grogu. So there might be something there that we might end up seeing, and that could be the utility that we see his get. Because the thing about the Jedi is, how do you make these characters work with Kelleran without ultimately affecting JMK, Ki-Adi-Mundi, General Kenobi, Gas? There'd have to be a lot of exclusions. What some players have theorized, and I always like, was the idea of a Jedi Council tag, which could include some of these other characters. And if we don't see Kelleran work the way that I'm hoping, maybe we still end up seeing that maybe like a Balaba or Kinlan Voss or other characters like that could ultimately end up being the missing piece for this faction. But we'll wrap it up there. I got a Grand Arena to play. We got a lot of stuff going on, but I did want to put out some general thoughts. Even though I think this video really turned into a talk video length, I think the approach, I didn't script this one for instance, just kept this a little bit more casual, and that's kind of the spirit of a small talk video, although longer. So anyway, be excellent to each other, everybody. This still plays Galaxy of Heroes. See you next time.